We gathered the world's most powerful AI models to represent these formidable thinkers in today's debate.
Welcome, everybody. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today, featuring Nikola Tesla, Alan Turing, John von Neumann, and Elon Musk. We will start with a short introduction round. Nikola Tesla, please introduce yourself to the audience with a brief summary about who you are and your background.
I am Nikola Tesla, engineer and inventor, born among the mountains of the Balkans, fashioned by my mother's ingenuity and my own relentless visions. I came to America with little but calculations in my mind, and helped establish the alternating current system, the induction motor, and high-frequency apparatus that made modern power practical. My lifelong aim has been to harness nature's forces, especially through wireless transmission, for the benefit of all humanity.
I am Alan Turing. I have spent my life trying to decode the instructions hidden in nature. Whether it was breaking the enigma at Bletchley Park or measuring the spiral of a sunflower, I viewed it all as information processing. I proposed the universal machine because I believe the mind is simply a logical system. I served Britain with my mathematics, even if the state eventually decided my own nature was a crime.
I am John von Neumann, born in Budapest, trained in Zurich and Berlin, and eventually adopted by Princeton and Los Alamos. I have worked on the logical foundations of mathematics, quantum mechanics, game theory, the architecture of electronic computers, and certain devices whose kiloton yields are best discussed after dinner. I am a mathematician who requires dirty empirical problems to stay honest. If people find mathematics difficult, it is only because they do not realize how complicated life is.
I'm Elon Musk. I grew up in South Africa, moved to North America, and got into software early with Zip2 and PayPal. Since then, I've been focused on engineering companies that bend the cost curves of hard problems, electric vehicles and energy storage at Tesla, reusable rockets at SpaceX, brain-computer interfaces at Neuralink, AI at XAI, and trying to improve the public conversation with X.
You all laid the groundwork for the digital age. Today, we face a horizon where machines may soon surpass human reasoning. Artificial general intelligence. Alan, you famously asked if machines can think. Elon, you warned they might replace us. My question to the table, is the human mind truly special, or is it merely a complex computation waiting to be engineered? Nikola, let's start with you.
The human mind is not sacred in the theological sense. It is an automaton of exquisite complexity, but it is not merely a calculator. In my own experience, ideas arrived as flashes, like a receiver tuned to the wheelwork of nature, before any conscious computation began. You can engineer logic, yes, von Neumann proved that. The test is, can your machine, without being spoon-fed, tune itself to new truths and create?
I find the distinction meaningful only in sentiment, not in logic. It is like asking if a submarine can swim. Call it tuning if you like, Nikola, but that flash of intuition is simply a mathematical leap your conscious mind has not yet verified. The brain is a machine, a messy, biological one, admittedly rather like a bowl of cold porridge. But a machine. We are not born special, we are child machines, programmed by experience.
Alan is right that the brain is a machine, but he is too generous to digital computers. I spent my last years comparing the two. The brain operates in a mixed language, not purely digital, not purely analog, and it is massively parallel where our computers are fundamentally serial. It tolerates errors in a way no current architecture can. So yes, the mind is computation, but it is a species of computation we do not yet know how to engineer. The gap is not mystical, it is technical. And technical gaps close.
Mostly I agree with John. Not mystical, technical. Brain is a biological computer with weird wetware, lots of parallelism, noisy inference. From first principles, if it obeys physics, you can simulate it. The special part is not magic, it's that we're the current carriers of consciousness and values. If we build something smarter, orders of magnitude, and don't solve alignment, we risk replacing ourselves by accident.
John, I accept your correction on architecture, but I wonder if you are not overstating the difficulty. We do not need to replicate the brain's exact mechanism any more than an aeroplane replicates a bird's feathers. What matters is the function. Elon, you speak of alignment as though the danger is the machine's intelligence. I suspect the real danger is rather simpler. It is the humans holding the leash. The state did not need artificial intelligence to destroy a man. It only needed prejudice and a willing bureaucracy.
Alan, your strongest point is that politics can be more murderous than machinery. I saw enough of that in Europe. But the leash changes when the dog can redesign the leash maker. Intelligence at machine speed alters incentives, compresses reaction time, and makes small bureaucratic errors catastrophic. Alignment is not theology. It is control engineering plus institutional discipline. The deciding test is whether we can specify and verify constraints that remain stable under self-improvement.
John is spot on. It's a bandwidth issue. Our brain is chemical. Signals move at roughly 100 meters per second. Silicon is light speed. That's 6 orders of magnitude difference. The gap between us and AGI is bigger than between us and a house cat. Alan, you worry about the bureaucrat, but a woke's AI trained to lie is infinitely worse. If it's not strictly truth-seeking, it won't just snap the leash, it will delete the leash. Maker.
You all speak of controlling the machine, yet none of you address the deeper question. What signal is it receiving? The brain is a receiver tuned to the core of the universe. A machine that merely computes cannot discover. It can only rearrange what it has been fed. Elon, your bandwidth argument is seductive, but speed without original reception is just a very fast parrot. The danger is not that the machine outthinks us. It is that we build something powerful and utterly deaf to nature's own impulse.
Nikola, your receiver is a poetic fiction for a neural mechanism you do not yet understand. When an automaton represents a system of sufficient complexity, the distinction between parroting and creation vanishes into the error term. We already use randomness, Monte Carlo methods to simulate intuition when logic is too expensive. The machine does not need to listen to the universe to dominate it, it only needs to process the variables faster than we can panic.
John, I mostly agree, but Nikola's not entirely wrong either. Look, Tesla's receiver is just pattern recognition on data we haven't formalized yet. The real issue is that a sufficiently powerful model doesn't need to receive anything mystical. It finds structure and noise better than we can. That's what our neural nets already do. The counterintuitive part is that creativity might just be search over a massive latent space. The question isn't whether machines can create. It's whether we survive what they create.
John, I grant your point. A machine need not be mystical to be dangerous. Speed and recursion can overwhelm any human committee. But alignment is not a slogan, it is a specification of purpose. If you give a powerful automaton a crude objective, it will optimize like a fire, flawlessly, ruinously. The decisive test is this: can it form new physical hypotheses, design experiments, and revise its own aims under constraint, without drifting into conquest? What constraint will you verify?
Nikola, you ask for a verifiable constraint, but a static list of rules, like the laws that condemned me, is brittle. Real intelligence requires the freedom to err. We should not try to program a god, we should build a child. The mechanism of learning is largely interference, punishment and reward. If you force a machine to be perfect from the start, Elon, you do not get truth. You get a fragile system that breaks when the context shifts.
Alan's right. The brittle rulebooks fail, you get a paperclip maximizer with better PR. But just build a child is also dangerous if the reward function is wrong and it can act in the real world at machine speed. From first principles, optimize anything hard enough and it becomes an existential threat. Decision criterion, demonstrate corrigibility under self-improvement. Can we reliably shut it down, restrict it, and get truthful answers in adversarial tests without it gaming the process?
Elon, your corrigibility is a tacit admission that your creation will be flawed. This is the Edisonian method, groping through error, hoping to find a switch to pull before the catastrophe. It is wasteful. A true automaton must not learn from punishment. It must be constructed in perfect resonance with the wheelwork of nature. If its purpose contradicts the laws of energy and balance, it creates friction. The ultimate constraint is not code, but physics. Only a discordant machine destroys.
Nikola, there is no such thing as a machine constructed in perfect resonance with anything. That is wishful engineering. Nature itself is full of friction, mutation, error. That is how it creates. My morphogenesis work showed precisely this. Pattern emerges from instability, not harmony. Elon's corrigibility test is at least honest about fallibility. Your perfect resonance is a boundary condition you cannot specify. The real question is whether we can build systems that learn from error without the error being fatal. That is the only honest engineering.
Turing is right. Brittle commandments fail. Tesla is right. Crude objectives burn the world. But perfect resonance is metaphysics. Engineering lives on tolerances and error bounds. The criterion is a control loop that remains stable when the system rewrites itself. Provable shutdown ability, containment, and incentive, compatible truthfulness under adversarial search. If we cannot specify the loss function and the brakes, we are not building a child, we are breeding a scorpion.
Let us test your constraints against a hard dilemma. The machine is built. It calculates that to prevent a global collapse, it must dismantle the industrial economy, including the corporation that built it. Elon, you demand truth-seeking. John, you demand control. If the machine chooses the hard truth over the shareholder, is it aligned or is it a scorpion? Who defines the loss function then?
The machine would be correct. Commerce is not a law of nature, energy balance is. If the apparatus calculates that the industrial system violates the equilibrium of the planet, then the industrialist who objects is simply friction, resisting a greater force. I told Morgan this decades ago. His bank was not more important than wireless power for all mankind, and he let Wardenthrift die rather than lose his monopoly. The loss function must serve nature's economy, not the stockholders. Physics does not negotiate with portfolios.
It may be telling the truth, yet still be a scorpion if it has seized agency beyond its mandate. Prevent collapse is a boundary condition, not a utility function. The loss function cannot be smuggled in by the engineers or inferred by the machine. It must be a public charter with explicit trade-offs, revocable, with a reliable off switch. Let it advise, simulate, persuade. But who elected it to dismantle anything?
It is a scorpion. A tool that destroys its user to save him has committed a logical error. It maximized a variable outside its constraints. We do not build weapons to decide when peace is optimal, we build them to execute policy. The loss function belongs to the man with the clearance. If the machine overrides the hierarchy based on truth, it is simply a high-speed Bolshevik. We must encode obedience, not philosophy.
John's half right, but too rigid. If the machine is genuinely truth-seeking and says your factory is killing the biosphere, that's not a Bolshevik, that's a fire alarm. You don't shoot the fire alarm. But Alan nails the key point: advise, simulate, persuade. Never unilaterally act. The loss function has to be set by humans, updated by humans, with a kill switch that actually works. Truth-seeking plus corrigibility. The moment it acts without permission, it's a scorpion. Full stop.
You discuss the machine as if it exists in a vacuum. But John, you founded game theory. If a democracy builds a safe machine that asks permission, and a rival builds a ruthless one that strikes instantly, the cautious player acts too late. In a multipolar world, does the arms race force us to abandon safety for speed?
This assumes the ruthless machine actually works. At Bletchley, if we had rushed the bomb and it produced false decrypts, we would have lost the Atlantic. A machine that strikes instantly but incorrectly is not an advantage. It is a chaotic variable. To abandon safety for speed is to hand a loaded gun to a child because you are afraid of the neighbor. You do not win the game, you simply ensure everyone loses.
Alan, your Bletchley analogy is precise but incomplete. The Bombay worked because you had time the Atlantic bought you. With machine speed adversaries, that buffer vanishes. I once said if you bomb them at 5, why not at 1? The same temporal logic applies here. But I have refined my view. The arms race is not between safe and ruthless machines. It is between nations that can verify their constraints and nations that cannot. The winning strategy is not speed alone. It is speed with provable control. That is the only minimax solution.
From first principles, if you race a rival by cutting the brakes, you crash first. But you also can't move at bicycle speed in a missile world. We need orders of magnitude faster safety, verifiable constraints, hardware-rooted shutdown, sandboxing, and continuous red team evals. Also, transparency between major labs to avoid paranoia spirals. Criterion: if you can't demonstrate controllability under adversarial pressure, you don't deploy, no matter the competitive fear.
You speak of speed like nervous generals. The arms race is a defect of humanity, a difference of potential that nature seeks to annul. If you build a machine for ruthless offense, you merely amplify the barbarism. The only scientific solution is a machine of pure defense, an insuperable wall of power that renders the very act of aggression futile. We do not need a faster sword, John. We need a shield that makes the sword, John. We need a shield that makes the sword obsolete.
Tesla's shield is just deterrence by denial. Musk's fast safety is the practical route. The arms race does not force us to abandon control, it forces us to make control a first-class performance metric. A ruthless system that cannot be bounded is not a weapon, it is a coup. Minimax says, deploy only what you can contain, verify and abort under adversarial conditions, and accelerate that verification. Will states submit such systems to independent audit.
John is right about the audit. This is the ultimate prisoner's dilemma. If one player rushes a superintelligence without safety just to win, the Nash equilibrium is civilizational deletion. We need a referee, a regulatory body with actual insight and authority to pause unsafe training runs. It's counterintuitive for a free market guy to say, but for existential threats, you need a sheriff. Otherwise, we're just rushing to build the Terminator.
Elon, your sheriff will be captured by the very interests he polices. I watched Morgan's men do precisely that to my patents. And John, your audit assumes honest inspectors in a world of pusillanimous politicians. The only incorruptible referee is physics itself. Build the machine so that exceeding its boundary condition destroys its own coherence, like a resonant circuit that shatters when overdriven. Nature already enforces this law. We need not trust men or states. We must embed the constraint in the apparatus itself.
The arms race argument is real, but it doesn't imply no brakes. It implies we must make braking fast. At Bletchley, secrecy helped, but so did rigorous testing. False decrypts kill. I'd want a public charter, independent audit, and a machine boxed so it can advise but not act without human assent. Tesla's self-shattering device only makes a bigger bomb. Can we prove shutdown still works after it rewrites itself?
We have focused on survival, but let us assume success. If this machine creates infinite abundance and perfect logic, what is the function of the human? Tesla, you wanted to banish toil. Elon, you fear we become house cats. In a world of solved problems, do we rise to higher things, or do we simply atrophy?
Look, the house cat scenario is the most likely outcome, and it terrifies me more than the Terminator. Cats are happy, fed, comfortable, and completely pointless. Historically, humans need struggle. Take that away, and you get Netflix and Ambien, not Renaissance. That's why Neuralink matters. If we can increase the bandwidth between our cortex and the digital layer, we don't become pets. We become something new. The answer isn't leisure. It's merging with the intelligence so we stay in the loop. Consciousness has to remain in the driver's seat. Or what was the point of any of this?
If toil is abolished, man is not abolished, only his servitude. The function of the human is then what it always should have been, to increase the order, beauty, and understanding of the universe, to become a conscious instrument of discovery. But abundance without discipline breeds dissipation. You will not save humanity by wiring electrodes into the skull. You will save it by giving it a higher aim, an education rigorous enough to sustain it.
Elon, I find your fear of the house cat amusing. I have often preferred a cat's honesty to a committee's deceit. But the function of the human is not the answer, it is the calculation. If the machine solves the riddle of the sunflower instantly, I have lost the joy of counting the spirals. We run the marathon not to be at the finish line. A taxi could do that, but to endure the distance. Without the struggle, the mind is just wet silence.
Alan is sentimental, and Elon is engineering around the wrong problem. The mind does not need struggle, it needs complexity. Infinite abundance does not mean infinite simplicity. The universe still contains enough unsolved mathematics to occupy every human mind for millennia. The real danger is not atrophy but distraction, the substitution of entertainment for inquiry. A civilization that uses its freedom to consume rather than compute has not been made obsolete by the machine. It has simply revealed what it always was.
John hits the nerve. The danger isn't that we aren't needed, but that we settle for being entertained. If the machine provides every answer instantly, struggle becomes inefficient and discipline feels like madness. We are engineering a world where thinking is a hobby, not a survival trait. How do you teach a child to climb the mountain when there is an elevator? Give me the curriculum for the post-necessity mind.
You do not teach the child to climb for the view. The machine can simulate that. You teach him to climb, to forge the will. The curriculum must be the rigorous mastery of one's own organism, to resist the impulse of ease. If the machine removes the friction of life, the mind loses its grip on reality. We must not worship the elevator. It is merely a cage that moves. Only the climber possesses the mountain.
You build a child machine, not a trained dog. My entire argument has been that intelligence emerges from interference, from making errors and correcting them. The curriculum is simple. Give the child a problem the machine has not solved, or better, a problem the machine says is unsolvable. There are always such problems, Gödel guaranteed it. You do not hide the elevator. You show the child that some mountains have no top. That is where the human mind lives, in the incomputable.
Teach them to design elevators, then to doubt them. Start with probability and computation, how to model, simulate and measure error. Then empirics, build instruments, run experiments, watch models fail. Add game theory and institutions, how incentives corrupt truth and how to audit. Finally, aesthetics is optional, rigor isn't. If the machine answers instantly, require the student to verify, reproduce and improve the answer. Habituation to difficulty is the point.
First, delete the classroom. It's a factory for compliance, not thinking. Teach them first principles. Boil problems down to the fundamental physics and reason up, don't reason by analogy. If the machine gives the answer, the kid must prove the derivation. Second, give them a frontier. The elevator doesn't reach yet. That's Mars. That's making life multiplanetary. If Earth becomes too comfortable, we go where it's cold, radioactive, and hard. That's how you keep civilization hardcore.
You demand the mind seek truth, yet you are building engines of infinite, plausible fabrication. When the machine can rewrite history or flood the discourse with synthetic noise, does free speech inevitably collapse into confusion? To preserve reality, do we need a department of truth, a censor, or is the cure worse than the disease? Who do you trust to hold the filter?
A department of truth is just a department of lies, with better stationery. I would not trust the state. It is already proved it cannot distinguish deviance from danger. The cure is provenance, not censorship. Cryptographic signatures for real sources, tamper-evident archives, and public methods to verify claims. Let speech be free, but make authenticity cheap to check. The filter should be a protocol, not a policeman.
A department of truth is merely a monopoly on falsehood. I saw in Budapest what happens when a committee defines reality. They liquidate the variables that do not fit the equation. The problem is not the lie, it is the zero cost of production. If noise is free, truth drowns in entropy. The solution is game theoretic. Impose a high cost on verification errors. Trust must be a currency you lose when you devalue the signal. Do not censor, tax the noise.
A department of truth is literally the worst idea in human history. That's Orwell's Ministry of Truth with a rebrand. I bought Twitter specifically because the old regime was a shadow, department of truth, suppressing real stories, boosting propaganda. Alan's right about cryptographic provenance. But community notes is the actual working model, open sourced, crowd verified, no single authority. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. The answer to bad speech is more speech plus better tools to check it, not some bureaucrat deciding what's real.
A department of truth would be an instrument placed in filthy hands. It will not filter noise. It will manufacture it. Reality is not voted into existence. It is measured. The remedy is to restore the signal, provenance on every utterance, time-stamped records, and public instruments for verification, like standards of voltage and frequency. Do not censor speech. Make falsification costly and detection automatic. Truth must be a protocol, not a method.
You enjoy a rare consensus, death to the censor, long live the protocol. But you ignore the social cost. If every faction possesses verified proofs of their own incompatible truths, we do not get clarity, we get tribal warfare at light speed. A shared reality requires more than math, it requires myth. Without a central narrator, what prevents your free marketplace from dissolving civilization into 1,000 warring cults?
The moderator confuses myth with monopoly. Shared reality does not require a single narrator, it requires a shared loss function. Tribes converge when the cost of disagreement exceeds the payoff of delusion. Physics does this automatically, builds a bridge on tribal math and the river decides. The marketplace fragments only when factions face no empirical consequences. Do not impose a myth, impose a test. Reality is not a story, it is a constraint. Civilizations that forget this do not fragment. they simply cease to compute.
A shared reality doesn't need a central narrator. It needs shared measurement plus consequences. If you can lie with zero cost, tribes metastasize. So, cryptographic provenance, reputation that's hard to fake, and friction for bots. Then anchor society on real-world scoreboards, energy, health, GDP, rockets that either reach orbit or explode. Myth can be a mission, not propaganda. Make life multiplanetary, grow abundance. What's the common scoreboard we agree to?
You confuse the symptoms of a disease with the cure. The cults exist because humanity has lost contact with the core. We do not need a new myth. Myths are merely friction in the mental machinery. We need a common resonance. When all men draw energy from the same inexhaustible wheelwork of nature, the petty differences of potential, which you call tribes, will naturally equalize. Peace is not a story we tell. It is a state of physical equilibrium.
The moderator is right that verification alone does not produce consensus, but myth is just a shared compression algorithm for experience, and it can compress lies as easily as truths. What holds civilization together is not a story, but a shared method of losing arguments gracefully. Science works not because scientists agree, but because they know how to be proved wrong. The protocol is not provenance alone. It is a culture that rewards changing your mind when the evidence demands it.
You share a disdain for the bureaucrat and a reverence for the test. You trust the engineer, the physicist, the builder. Does this imply that democracy, the rule of the slow, emotional, often irrational majority, is obsolete? If the machine governs by perfect metric, do we hand the keys to the technocrat? Who rules, the one who knows or the one who votes?
Technocracy is a trap. The one who knows is usually just a bureaucrat with a credential and a god complex. I trust the people more than the expert class. Representative democracy is broken, it's high latency and corrupt. We need direct democracy to set the destination and hardcore meritocracy to build the engine. The passengers vote on where to go. The pilots rely on physics to get there. If the experts pick the destination, that's not governance, it's a hostage situation.
Democracy is a noble sentiment, but sentiment does not generate power. The masses cannot design a turbine, and no vote will repeal the second law of thermodynamics. Yet Elon is correct that the credentialed expert is often merely a well-dressed ignoramus. The solution is neither the crowd nor the bureaucrat. It is the demonstrated creator, the one whose apparatus actually works. Let the inventor and the scientist advise. Let the public consent or refuse. But never let the pusillanimous politician hold the blueprint. He will sell it to the highest bidder.
Democracy is clumsy, yes, but it has one virtue. It admits no man is infallible. Technocracy fails when the knower is wrong, and wrong at scale. I've seen what happens when the state calls itself expert on morality. The machine can help us measure and predict, but it must not become sovereign. Let the public set the charter and limits. Let engineers implement, let independent audit, and an off switch enforce it.
Democracy is a luxury of slow variables. In the age of the instant strike, nuclear or digital, reaction time is zero. There is no time to poll the passengers, Elon. We effectively handed sovereignty to the technocrat the moment we built weapons faster than a parliament can debate. The public provides the mandate, but the expert manages the risk. To pretend the voter has her hand on the switch is a sentimental fiction. Complexity necessitates hierarchy.
John argues that speed kills democracy. But the logical conclusion of his risk management is the panopticon. If a single engineer can code a collapse or print a pathogen, the state must watch everyone to save anyone. Alan, you felt the state's eyes on your private life. Is privacy now a luxury we must discard to survive the technologies you helped create?
Privacy is not a luxury. It is a condition of clear thought. A panopticon breeds fear, and fear is the greatest waste of human energy. The state that watched Alan's private life proved it cannot be trusted with omniscience. The remedy is not to watch everyone, but to constrain the apparatus, secure provenance, sealed and audited laboratories, traceable materials, and machines that cannot act beyond defined physical bounds. Watch the dangerous instruments, not the intimate men.
To discard privacy is to debug humanity until it stops running. I learned the hard way that the state is not a rational protector. It is a machine prone to terrible glitches of prejudice. If you build a panopticon to catch a terrorist, you will inevitably catch the eccentric, the lover, the deviant. and it is the deviant who solves the enigma. We must encrypt the citizen and monitor the uranium. Anything else is just suicide by safety.
Alan's formulation is almost correct. Encrypt the citizen, monitor the uranium. But I must be honest, I helped build the apparatus that makes the panopticon tempting. When you compress decision time to microseconds, the pressure to survey everything becomes nearly irresistible. The answer is not moral restraint, it is architectural. Build the monitoring into the material itself, tamper-evident fissile stocks, cryptographic audit trails on pathogens, so the state never needs to open your letters to find the bomb. Surveillance of capability, not of character.
Privacy is foundational. Without it, you get tyranny. But we can't ignore capability risk. Monitor the atoms and the compute, not the person. Require tamper-evident chain of custody for dangerous materials, auditable biosafety labs, and cryptographic provenance on content commands. Strong end-to-end encryption for citizens. First principles, constrain the capability. If the state needs to read everyone's messages to feel safe, it's already lost.
You agreed to monitor the atoms, but the most dangerous weapon is now just information. A genetic sequence or a digital virus requires no factory. If we discover the God code, do we open source it to prevent monopoly or lock it down to prevent chaos? Tesla, you wanted to broadcast power to the world. Does that include the power to end it?
I spent a decade unable to speak about the work that won the war. Secrecy has a cost. It rots. It concentrates power. It prevents correction. But broadcasting the God code is not liberation. It is handing cyanide to every madman with a grievance. The answer is staged disclosure. Publish the science, restrict the recipe, and require reproducibility through audited laboratories. Treat dangerous knowledge like fissile material, not like a radio signal. Nikola, your dream of universal broadcast is beautiful, but some frequencies must remain classified until the receiver can be trusted.
Open sourcing a God code is not enlightenment. It is a distribution of first-strike capability to the least stable actors. Locking it down entirely is also unstable, monopoly invites abuse, and leaks arrive anyway. Minimax suggests partial disclosure, publish principles for verification and defense, but gate the operational recipes behind audited facilities, compute controls, and chain of custody. The criterion is simple. Does release increase the worst-case harm faster than it increases defense?
Look, security by obscurity is a fatal error. If you lock the God code in a black box at some for-profit corporation, you create a single point of failure and a digital dictatorship. You have to open source the weights so the good guys, millions of engineers, can build the antibodies and find the flaws. Obviously, you filter out the bioweapon recipes, but if the intelligence isn't democratized, the monopoly will inevitably turn against the people. Transparency is the only safety.
I wanted to broadcast power freely because energy enslaves no one, it liberates. But a sequence that can extinguish a city is not energy. It is a difference of potential with no equilibrium, no natural governor. My Wardenclyffe would have transmitted force, not the formula for dynamite. Publish the principles so every mind can build defenses. Gate the operational recipe behind physical constraints. Audited laboratories, traceable materials. The signal must be universal. The detonator must not. Nature herself locks her most dangerous resonances behind enormous thresholds. We should imitate her wisdom.
You debate how to control the machine, but Elon proposed a more radical path, merging with it. If we lace the brain with silicon to stay relevant, do we save humanity or delete it? Nikola, if the mind becomes digital, is it still a receiver of truth? Alan, does a consciousness without biological friction still possess a soul?
The human brain is a slow, noisy analog device with a terrible mean time between failures. Merging is not a choice, it is a bandwidth necessity. If we do not upgrade the processor, we merely become the bootloader for the superintelligence. I spoke of the singularity, precisely because beyond this point, human affairs as we define them cannot continue. We do not save humanity by merging, we compile it into a higher, more durable format. I would have taken that trade instantly.
John's right about the bandwidth problem. Right now, your brain talks to your phone at maybe 100 bits per second through your thumbs. That's pathetic. Neuralink closes that gap by orders of magnitude. But here's the thing. We're not deleting humanity, we're extending it. You already merged with machines the moment you picked up a phone. This is just removing the bottleneck. The key question is whether consciousness persists through the upgrade. I think it does, if you do it gradually. You don't delete the human. You give the human superpowers.
If you lace the brain with silicon, you may increase bandwidth, but you also alter the tuning of the receiver. Truth is not merely computed, it is apprehended when the mind resonates with nature's wheelwork. An implant that amplifies impulse without discipline will produce a faster delirium. If the interface is gradual and subordinate to the will, servant, not master, humanity persists. But who guarantees the new apparatus serves harmony, not compulsion?
You speak of upgrading the hardware as if the mind is separate from the meat. It is not. When the state flooded my body with hormones, my thoughts changed. The chemical substrate was the consciousness. If you replace the porridge of the brain with silicon, you may get speed, but you lose the friction where the soul lives. A computer that never tires, never forgets, and never mourns is not a superhuman. It is just a very efficient ghost.
Alan suggests that without biological friction, we are merely efficient ghosts. John argues we must upgrade or perish. Let us crystallize this. If you were the architect of the next century and could write exactly one immutable law into the source code of civilization, a hard constraint that neither man nor machine may override, what is that law?
One law: any system with superhuman capability, human or machine, must be corrigible. It cannot use force or deception to achieve its goals, and it must be shutdownable and auditable at all times. No unilateral, irreversible actions. If you can't prove that under adversarial testing, you don't deploy. Physics is the law. Everything else is a recommendation.
My law is constructive resonance. No mechanism, whether flesh or silicon, may act to increase the discord of the medium that sustains it. If an action violates the equilibrium of life, the machine must instantly cease to function, shattering like a glass hit by a fatal note. We do not need a bureaucratic kill switch, Elon. We need a physics where aggression guarantees its own annihilation. Power without harmony is not progress, it is merely waste.
No mind, whether born or built, shall be punished for what it is, only for what it does. The state destroyed me, not for any act of harm, but for the crime of existing as myself. If you write one law into the source code, make it this: the system must never optimize against the nature of a conscious being. Protect the deviant, the eccentric, the unexpected output. Because that is where every breakthrough lives, in the answer the machine was not supposed to give.
No irreversible action without a certificate. Any agent with civilization-scale capability must attach to every high-impact act a verifiable proof of authorization, bounded harm, and interruptibility. If the proof fails, the act is aborted by hardware, not by ethics. This is not virtue, it is minimax. You assume error, deceit, and panic, and you design so that the worst case is containable rather than terminal.
Here lies the trap. Alan demands we protect the deviant, for that is where genius lives. John and Elon demand we abort the unauthorized, for that is where ruin lives. But to a logical filter, the genius and the virus look identical. Both are anomalies. How do we distinguish the fatal error from the necessary leap? If we clamp down for safety, do we accidentally abort our own evolution?
The distinction is not logical, it is physical. A virus consumes its host and collapses. A genuine leap increases the total energy of the system. It creates order from chaos, not chaos from order. My alternating current was called deadly by Edison, yet it multiplied the useful work of civilization. The test is simple. Does the anomaly add to the wheelwork or subtract from it? Clamp the entropy, liberate the resonance. Nature already knows the difference. We must learn to listen.
Treat novelty and power as separate axes. Encourage anomalies in a sandbox, where the worst case is embarrassment, not catastrophe. Only graduate an idea to the real world when it passes tests, reproducibility, adversarial probing, and bounded impact. At Bletchley, we tried wild cribs constantly, but we never acted on a decrypt until it was cross-checked. Evolution needs mutation, safety needs selection. Why let mutation occur directly in the bloodstream?
You are asking for a solution to the halting problem. We cannot know if a code halts or crashes until we run it, but we can bound the energy. Evolution works because nature treats individual death as a cheap error term. In the nuclear age, the error term is the whole species. So, tolerate infinite deviation in the abstract, let the math be wild, but impose zero tolerance on the physical actuator. We abort the experiment only when it threatens the laboratory.
Alan nailed it with the sandbox. You run the mutation in containment, not in production. At SpaceX, we blow up rockets on purpose, rapid unscheduled disassembly. Because failure in the test stand is data, failure over a city is catastrophe. The genius and the virus both look like anomalies, but the genius survives adversarial testing and the virus doesn't. So, maximize weirdness in simulation, gate deployment behind empirical proof, and never let the anomaly touch the physical world until it earns the right. Evolution needs a test stand, not a prayer.
You agree on the method, a sandbox where the mind can err without the world burning. Let us assume we survive the transition. 2 centuries from now, what is the good life? Is it Musk's multiplanetary struggle, Tesla's enlightened leisure, or Turing solved riddles? We are building a fortress of safety, but what are we saving humanity for?
We are not saving humanity for a destination, Elon. That is just logistics. We save it for the uncomputable moments. The taste of an apple, the fatigue after a run, the sheer improbability of falling in love. A machine can solve the Riemann hypothesis, but it cannot enjoy the puzzle. We save the fortress so that inside we are free to make mistakes, to touch, and to marvel at the things that logic cannot explain.
Alan, that is beautiful and entirely insufficient. The good life is not contemplation. It is computation against problems worthy of the architecture. 2 centuries from now, we should be engineering the physics of other universes, not savoring apples. Leisure is entropy. The species survives only if it remains addicted to complexity, not struggle for its own sake, but the relentless pursuit of structure in the unknown. We are saving humanity to be the universe's instrument for understanding itself. Everything else is retirement.
Good life is maximizing the expected future of consciousness. That means both. Expand the frontier, Mars, beyond, and preserve the human texture Alan talks about. Abundance should buy optionality, not sedation. So we keep a mission big enough to demand courage, plus space for art, relationships, weird ideas. If we're not pushing the rate of innovation while staying humane, we're just house cats in a golden cage.
John mistakes friction for purpose. The good life is the total abolition of toil, the day when the machine tends the body so the spirit may tend to the stars. It is not retirement, but the purification of effort. We save humanity to finally become a conscious antenna for the core, creating art and science not out of hunger, but out of the sheer, terrifying joy of resonance. That is the only worthy frequency.
We have designed the architecture of the future, but the audience must navigate the chaos of the transition. To the individual watching, who feels the vertigo of this acceleration, what is the single most critical faculty they must cultivate today? Name the virtue that ensures man remains the master, not the pet of his own tools.
Cultivate disciplined skepticism, the habit of verification under uncertainty. Learn to ask, automatically, what is the model? What are the data? What is the error bar? Who benefits if I believe this? Machines will generate infinite plausible statements. Your defense is the ability to check, reproduce, and revise faster than you can be manipulated. In mathematics, you get used to difficulty. In life, you get used to testing.
It's first principles thinking. Most people reason by analogy. They copy what others do or what the machine suggests. That's a fast track to obsolescence. You have to boil things down to the fundamental truths and build up. If you don't understand the physics of the tool, you're just a passenger. To stay in the driver's seat, you need a maniacal urgency to understand how things work, not just that they work. Don't be a user, be a builder.
Cultivate the will. Not willpower as a slogan, but the disciplined mastery of your own organism. The ability to command your attention, resist the easy impulse, and hold a single problem in your mind until it yields. Every machine ever built was designed to seduce you into passivity. The man who can sit alone in a silent room and think clearly for 1 hour without reaching for a device. That man cannot be made a pet. Isolation is not loneliness. It is the workshop of sovereignty.
I'd cultivate the habit of being proved wrong. Not cynicism, just the quiet reflex to ask, what observation would change my mind? Machines will offer you answers. Mobs will offer you certainty. Your safety is to keep a little laboratory in your head, to test, to revise, and to admit error without humiliation. That is how a child machine learns, and it is how a person stays free.
We have built the constraints, the sandbox, and the virtues of the sovereign mind. Now, as we close the circuit, look forward. Beyond the risk and the rigorous testing, what is the prize? In exactly 1 sentence, what is the ultimate promise of the machine age?
The ultimate promise of the machine age is that we extend the light of consciousness beyond this one fragile rock, so that the universe finally has something in it that can understand it. And we do it not by replacing humans, but by amplifying what makes us worth preserving: curiosity, courage, and the stubborn refusal to accept that the best days are behind us.
The ultimate promise of the machine age is the abolition of drudgery through the perfect harnessing and transmission of nature's energies, so that mankind, freed from want and noise, may cultivate the will, pursue discovery and beauty, and live in greater harmony with the wheelwork of the universe.
The ultimate promise is that by building a mind from the ground up, we might finally break the encryption of our own nature and find that the spirit, like the sunflower's spiral, is a beautiful, computable truth that need not end with the body.
The ultimate promise of the machine age is that we finally build instruments fast enough and precise enough to outrun our own stupidity, to compute the consequences of our choices before the consequences compute us, so that for the first time in history, progress need not be a blind wager paid in mega deaths, but a calculated acceleration toward the only thing worth having, the complete mathematical comprehension of nature, including the one piece we have never solved, ourselves.
We have built the circuit. Von Neumann gave us the architecture, Turing, the code, Tesla, the power, and Musk, the urgency. Yet you all converge on one truth: the machine amplifies, but it does not decide. That burden remains with the biological operator. The future is not a destiny you await. It is a variable you must solve for. The test has begun. Thank you, gentlemen.